Well, Oprah has called him one of the world's best psychotherapists, and we know that Oprah knows what she's talking about. Dr. Gary Neuman is a family counselor, New York Times best-selling author, and rabbi. He is creator of the Neuman Method and his new 11 DVD set, Creating Your Best Marriage, which is available at NeumanMethod.com. It all sounds so great. Hi, Dr. Gary.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on the show. So tell us about your new DVD set.
Well, it's really the first of its kind. I've been writing books for many years and doing tremendous research with over 1,000 people, both men and women, always looking for those nuggets, those differences, salient differences between successful and failed couples. And the idea that so many people can't find great marital therapy really caused me to do this DVD set where you can actually see me. We can talk to each other. It has a workbook that helps people uniquely make the experience their own. And I'm just convinced that I've been doing this methodology for 25 years, and it will make a difference in anybody's life. So we're really, really psyched about being able to help people in even more significant ways than a book form.
That's awesome. Well, now we know every marriage has their ups and downs. But how do we get back on track to having the kind of relationship, we did when we were dating?
Well, the first thing my research showed was the number one issue for people in unsatisfied marriages, and that was time. Mm-hmm. It's funny because people will talk about important subjects like communication and love, which is all very true. But when you think about it, you really can't do much unless you have the time consistently. So in my study, people who are happily married, they said that they spent on a daily average more than 30 minutes uninterrupted time talking. 25% of the happy marriages said they spent over 60 minutes on a daily average. The unhappy marriages were way below 30 minutes a day. 25% of them said they spent less than 5 minutes a day talking uninterrupted. So if there's one thing that people can do, it's to sit down and have a conversation with their spouse and say something like, look, what we have is too important to just let it go away. We need to find regular time, 4 or 5 nights a week, after the kids are put to bed, whatever it is, when we can sit for a half an hour more and chat and get back to knowing about our day and talking consistently. It's a terrible principle of most marriages that are failed in our world, that they do not put in the thought and focus that we do for anything else we want to be successful at. Mal, if I looked at you and I said, what's it going to take to be a great radio host, a great parent, you would say to me, that takes a lot of time and effort and energy. But if I look at people and say, what's going to take to be a great spouse? Everybody kind of scratches their head and looks around. Well, we went on a date a few years ago. No one has any answer. In order to be successful at anything, you've got to put in the time and the energy. And that's one of the most important things a person can do immediately.
I love that you're saying this because I completely agree with you. And I preach this myself because I tell my friends and different women that I work with that you can't afford not to take the time, even if it's just like 10 minutes in the morning to sit and connect and have a cup of coffee and, just stay connected during the day. And then at night, having time together over a glass of wine or just kicking back and just remembering that even though they've got children and they're crazy in the pace of life, that they have got to take the time to reconnect continually.
It is so, so true. And also, I love what you said, the 10 minutes. I think so many couples think about the date night, right? Although we should talk about that as well, but they think only when you get the babysitter for 3 or 4 or 5 hours. Like if you don't have a big chunk of time, nothing. Listen, thankfully I'm blessed. I've been married over 25 years. I have 5 children.
Wow.
When my kids were little, we had a young lady down the street, Sarah, and we would beg her to come over for like a half an hour. It was like peace at any price,
Sure, I know. I could at 5, I can imagine.
Just to walk around the block and have a few minutes to yourself. And we would do those things so that it didn't just have to be the big block time because we just need a little consistency. I'll tell you another one I just wanted to mention was appreciation. Because another simple thing that's so simple to do, it costs nothing. And it is so meaningful to a relationship. When I say I appreciate you, I'm saying I'm summing all of you up as valuable. And it goes such a long way, and it's inspires each other to do more and more good stuff for each other.
I'm so glad to hear you saying all this because I agree with everything you're saying. We're watching these shows. I'm saying America is watching all these reality shows, and you see these couples talking to each other, and they have such disdain in their voice and the way they speak to each other. It really disturbs me, when I hear this, and I think kids are watching this thinking that that's okay, that a married couple talk to each other with such disrespect. And
it is. It's sad. And what we have to know is in my study, 70% of marriages were unhappily married or divorced. Mm-hmm. So it's really the minority of us now that marry for the first time and are happily married. So people sometimes will say to me, well, we fight, we have disdain, but so do my neighbors, so does my friends, so does it. Well, you can't point to other people because they might have lousy marriages as well.
Right.
So we really have to be different nowadays to have healthy and happy, successful marriages.
And you do. You have to make the time. I always tell people, too, lock on the bedroom door could be helpful, especially when you have 5 kids.
It's something that I preach, and it is to lock your bedroom door. And I think mothers are freaked out about it more than the fathers are. Well, no, and I explain to them that you're not locking your kids out. You're locking yourselves in, believe you me.
Yes.
And obviously I don't mean that. I mean after the kids are in bed. But it's just the idea that I think the master bedroom, it's funny you bring it up. In the American world, I think we might as well put a revolving door on the master bedroom. And I think we've lost a little bit of that privacy and just saying in my house that there is space for the adults. We always feel if we want to talk, we have to get out of the house.
Right.
That's a terrible thing because, it's not so easy to do. So I think we have to try to preserve our bedroom as a place where we connect, physically, emotionally to each other without much interruption and not have it so easy for our children to just, blend in specifically in our bedroom.
Well, I always tell people children learn by example, and it's important that kids see the parents in a loving relationship, being excited to spend time together, saying it's time to go to bed, it's time for mom and dad now. We're on our little date or getting ready, and the anticipation and the excitement. I mean, because honestly, don't you believe that kids, they're just like little recorders and they're taking it in and they're watching and they're looking for clues and that affects how they view relationships and marriage later?
Well, it definitely does. And, science, and I've said it for many years, it's part of my work and my DVD series, is that our childhood has everything to do with how we naturally respond in relationships. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of our children is that we can train them to be naturally have healthy habits, and unfortunately, we can create in them to have naturally very unhealthy habits. It is important what you say. It's also very inspiring to children. Sometimes I feel that we as parents, and I think we're all guilty of this, we're driving our kids around to that other violin lesson or to that other, soccer tournament. Mm-hmm. And by the time we get home, we're so exhausted that we sometimes have to say, something, my kid is going to be far more helped by having a mother and father who love each other, have time for each other, than another lesson, another tournament, another, something. So sometimes we really have to just prioritize what's going on with our marriage. It's the story that when somebody comes to me, when a couple comes to me and says, half an hour, we've got a half an hour a day to talk. Are you kidding me? Have you been in my house? And I will say to them, it's a funny thing. If I said to you that your child needed some therapy that was an hour more a day, or they had some, a tournament or some athletic or dance that they had to do that was an hour a day, what would happen? Suddenly, the heavens would open up and you'd have an hour a day. So
that is so true.
We're putting our priorities.
Well, that is so true. I am so glad to hear you saying this. There are so many women out there, and as I meet women and speak to them all over the country, and I'm sure you do too, it's like I'm so amazed at what happens. And I was guilty of it too at one time in my life. And I know we get so obsessed with becoming a mom. It's like this rite of passage, and we want to be super mom, and we want to do it all right. And the next thing you know, mom's calling, her husband daddy, and dad's calling, his wife mommy, and pretty soon you're right. Mommy and daddy, and you kind of hit this place of you don't even know who you are anymore. You just don't feel sexual. You don't feel anything, and the kids are in bed, and you kind of lose yourself to all of it.
It's very true. And I want to say something to women, because I've heard this story so many times, and I did a study actually on women who physically cheated and remained faithful as well. Too many women think to themselves, my kids are young, and my husband and I, we're not really connecting. But that's the way it is. We're building careers. The children are growing. When the kids are older and we've built our careers 5, 10, 15 years from now, then my husband and I will reconnect. It is an ingredient for disaster.
I agree.
I can't tell you how often that ends up with such pain. And no, of course, when you have little kids, yes, you can't have as much time. You're not sipping champagne in the jacuzzi every night with your husband. But right today, in the present, there should always be a marriage that you have to focus on. You just can't put it on hold.
I agree. Oh, I just love everything that you're saying. It's just amazing, because I get so frustrated with women because they just totally get into this negative place, and they forget that, when they get home, I know women are tired, and I'm always preaching this myself. You can pick the cute sweats. You don't have to wear the baggy, ugly sweats when your husband comes home. You can kind of stop and maybe put a little lip gloss on and take the time to smell good and be excited that he's coming home, because it's like you said, that appreciation. It's when you do that and you take that extra step, then that person knows that you're thinking about them.
Yeah, and it's important. Listen, it goes both ways. Look, I feel bad for so many women today who, now they were moms before, now they have to work. I mean, let's face facts. The concept that when women went out to work, that men were going to share the paternal and maternal duties and household chores 50-50, I don't think it's ever happened. Right. So I feel like they're just completely overloaded. But something? Women can go to their husbands and say, I want to have more sex just like you do. I want more help getting the kids asleep. I want to do this more as a team. It will benefit both of us. And women do have to know that men are very willing to put in extra energy when they feel like they are winning, like they're inspiring you and you're happy with them. I think it's unfortunate in too many situations we get into this negative trend where both couples feel, but surely men will sometimes feel, no matter what I do, it's never good enough. And that might be because he's difficult to live with at all. I have no idea.
Right.
But women have to remember that men do get inspired when they feel like they've won and they've made you happy. That makes them want to do it again and again. So when like you said, if you're going to dress up nice and try to do more for him and be more appreciative and do the things he wants to do, it's going to come back to you. You're going to experience more love from him, and he's going to be more inspiring and kind towards you as well.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to get your series and share it with some of my friends, because I think that you've got such amazing, just common sense thoughts here, that
Thank you.
That I've been thinking in my brain, and it's so cool to hear you say all of this. Now, I want to ask you a question. Unfortunately, cheating is so common in marriages, and there's obviously many layers of the things that go wrong. Is the marriage, is it completely doomed? Is it savable? Does anybody really get over that? Because, that's tough. It's tough to feel that betrayal.
It is. And by the way, they do. In my DVD set, by the way, the 11th is not for everybody. It is a specific hour-and-a-half long DVD session for people who have experienced cheating, physical cheating. So the fact is I've helped a lot of people with intensive therapy to overcome the cheating issue. Now, there are some things that you definitely need. Number one is the person who cheated has got to be remorseful. There's got to be, if he or she are cavalier about their cheating, I can tell you right now, the odds go down that that's going to work, or that they're not going to cheat again. But very often they are quite remorseful, and they want to know, why did I do this? How did I get into this situation? And it really requires some skilled help, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I don't think people can just solve it in a snap or by themselves. I think it requires, as I help people through my work, to understand their childhood, their parents, how they grew up, and how they were built, sometimes, believe it or not, to sabotage their lives in their love life. And they also have to look at what their marriage was and wasn't offering, because even once we get over the cheating, very often people who are in cheating relationships, both spouses will say, even before he or she cheated, we had a lot of trouble in our marriage. So we have to go back and we have to fix also what was going on. Not that that was ever an excuse.
No.
It was terrible and disgusting what they did, that they chose to do that. But there often was a marriage that was faltering long before anyone else was introduced into the relationship. So it can happen.
Right.
But you can't stick your head in the sand. He can't or she can't just apologize to the victim, and the victim should say, well, what am I supposed to do? You know, they apologize, I got to get over it. That's not resolution. That's not creating any changes. You have to have resolution and see change in your life happen in order for you to ever trust again.
And don't you think, too, I've seen also where a couple will stay together and get back together, and the other person who was cheated on doesn't understand that, okay, if you are going to say, I forgive you, and you're going to work through this and go to therapy and everything, and the person's not cheating anymore, that you have to at some point let it go. You have to like say, I'm not going to keep calling you on it. You know, it's like they use it as fuel every time there's an argument, and throwing it back in the face is not a positive way to handle this either. No, it's not. And there are certain little rules that therapy is supposed to help with that. I have to tell you, there's not great, I don't find that there's great marital therapy out there. I think it's different than individual therapy. So I think a lot of marital therapists tend to kind of listen and try to inspire. I don't know that they have a real clear path on how to help people, and they tend to give people hope without any real change of life and resolving their issues, and they tend to get upset again. So yes, when people are going to begin to get over it, they will need to get over it. But that doesn't mean that they're going to forget about it. You know, there's forgive and forget, and then there's forgive. Sure. And trust comes with years. The person who cheated, it becomes his or her job to help the other person trust them again. So if they're walking around saying, hey, come on, it's been 2 months already. How long you going to hold on? No. That's you're not realizing what you've truly done to the person. You have to remember that cheating has two parts to it. It's the part that you actually cheated, but almost always, 93% of the time in my study, it's that you lied again and again to the person who you say you love when they look at you and said, something going on? I got this call, whatever, and you look at them in the eyes and you say no. And not only that, you say, how dare you? And what's wrong with you? And you drive your spouse crazy. You know, it's really crazy making. So there's a lot to get over, and a lot that the person who cheated has got to accept and apologize profusely for before being able to move on and be able to regain the trust of his or her spouse. Wow. Well, I'm very excited to say that your 11 DVD series coming out, Creating Your Best Marriage, available at NeumanMethod.com. Go out and get it. It sounds like it's life-changing and marriage-saving. Dr. Gary Neuman, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Always a pleasure.
Well, I hope we can have you back sometime, because you've got so much advice. I would need like a whole series just to get through all your fabulousness. You've written into AskMaul at MaulAnderson.com, and I'm answering your questions and taking your calls as we can.